Let me preface this video by saying that this manga deals with some incredibly messed up, dirty, and mature themes. These themes in the story are showcasing these things to make you feel disgust as the main character comes to realize. So keep in mind while I talk about these themes that they are intentionally gross to make a point, and it is doing the exact opposite of condoning them. So if you're okay with some sensitive topics, on with the review. Onanie Master Kurosawa, or Masturbation Master Kurosawa, stick with me here, is a manga that published from September 2007 to March 2008, and ran for only 31 chapters. In its short 31 chapter run, the manga deals with some really heavy themes, mainly addiction to perversion, the psychological impact of puberty on males, overcoming your mental weaknesses, taking responsibility for your actions, making up for your mistakes, and changing as a person as a result. These themes don't seem very dark at first glance, but it's how they're handled in the manga that turn them into deep psychological explorations, going into some dark areas of the mind. Before I even get started on reviewing the individual elements of the story, I'll go ahead and say that this is a very good manga, and right off the bat I highly recommend you check it out for yourself instead of having me explain it. I'm going to do my best to not reveal the big twists and major elements of the story, but I'm still going to be talking about the themes, and I'm going to be showing some panels that pertain to that, so if you don't want to be spoiled but you still want to watch the reviews, I would recommend that you just don't look at the visual imagery too much. Just to give enough background information to make a review, this is essentially the story of Kurosawa, who has a perverse addiction to masturbation and has some quite disgusting fantasies of his female classmates. Every day after school ends, he goes to the girls' bathroom and does his business there. When he gets found in the girls' bathroom by a girl who is getting constantly bullied by other female classmates, she makes a deal with Kurosawa. She will keep his secret if he does grotesque things to other girls, like relieving himself in their gym clothes, because she wants revenge on them. And like I said, these are quite grotesque and pretty disgusting themes, but there is a reason behind all of them, and trust me, these will relate back to a major story that have a reason for these existing. They're not just shock value. This deal is the center of the story the entire way through, but although it may seem absolutely mortifying in the beginning, there will be major changes. Also, Kurosawa is only 31 chapters long, as I mentioned earlier, so it's quick and easy to read, and it's got good pacing. So with that out of the way, I'll go into the story aspect. As I just briefly explained, the story of Kurosawa is messed up. It's pretty disgusting, and early on it may be difficult to read for some people, but this is all used to make a point, and trust me, it will make one eventually. The story has lots of good twists that you really won't expect coming, and I won't spoil them because they truly surprised me. There are two major standout twists that absolutely floored me, and they are integrated into the story in a way that makes sense while still being unpredictable, and they have lasting consequences all the way through. The overall story is an incredibly original idea, and sexual perversion has not been something that I've seen as the main theme of a story very often, especially in Japanese media.
I'm just kidding, there are plenty of Japanese novels and manga that explore themes of rampant sexualization in Japanese culture.
The story has nothing that seems out of place, that makes you go, how does that make any sense? And those twists are a key part of that. Even though they're surprising, they never break the realism of the story. And yes, although Onanie Master is incredibly exaggerated in certain aspects, it's a pretty realistic story in terms of character personalities and overall events. The deal between the two main characters is definitely odd, and it wouldn't happen in real life under pretty much any circumstance, but it services the story to such an incredible length that it can't be written off for the sake of realism. The decisions Kurosawa makes over the course of the manga make a lot of sense for his personality and situation, and the build up to him making decisions on certain situations is incredibly well done. It keeps you wondering what route he'll take and what consequences will result before it even happens. As I said earlier, Onanie Master is only 31 chapters long, and there is a 2-chapter after story that I recommend reading, but it's certainly not needed. The pace over the course of these 31 chapters is really good, and it doesn't get slow at any given point, and there's always a different message, emotion, or psychological effect being explored once you get past the early expositional chapters, which also do a very good job at setting up the characters and situation. If anything, I would say that Onanie Master could have been a little bit longer, maybe like 35 chapters, just so that they could explore the themes more in depth, but I would prefer that the authors don't drag out the story, which they didn't. Kurosawa for me is a character that is incredibly relatable, not because of his sexual perversion, but because of his personality. In my middle school years, I would say that I was very alike to Kurosawa in certain aspects, where I mainly wanted to separate myself from others even when they wanted to be friends with me, and I tried to bottle up my emotions instead of being open. This relatability shows how well the characters are written, that they're written realistically and with some emotional depth to them, that they are very alike to real people, and I'm sure that everyone could relate to the personality or struggle of a certain character within the story, whether that be Kurosawa or Kitahara. Kurosawa starts to learn what he's missing with the introduction of Tokugawa into the story, who essentially makes him feel what having a crush is like for the first time, in contrast to his normally perverse view of relationships. Kurosawa and Tokugawa are both very well done characters, and they both have a lot of depth to them. Kurosawa as a character really gets his emotions and thoughts explored to an incredibly deep level, and his development and change as a person from the beginning to the end is a journey really worth experiencing. I'm not going to go much more in depth on Kurosawa besides saying that he's an incredibly depthful and realistic character who has some realistic emotions, and the way he expresses these emotions and the way that the story explores his inner thoughts and psyche is very interesting and very unique. I don't want to exactly say what's going on there because it would spoil the story and the mindset that's happening in the story, which is essentially the basis of it all. So I don't want to spoil it. I'm just going to say that it's very, very in-depth, it's very realistic, and it's very well done. Kitahara, the other main character, is a bit exaggerated, but she is still a character that has a profound impact on the story in a way that makes sense. Still, she is by far the most unrealistic character in the story. She does get a lot of emotional depth, and her psyche gets explored quite a bit over the course of the series. Nagaoka is a character early on that seems like an average happy-go-lucky guy, and from my point of view at the beginning, I was sympathizing with Kurosawa finding him annoying. But later on in the story, he becomes another important character with emotional depth that makes you care for him and feel bad for him at times, which is a display of the great character writing at play in Onanie Master. The only thing I could possibly criticize about the characters is that two of them are exaggerated in some aspects, but not so much that it's unrealistic. For that reason, the character writing gets a full 10 out of 10. It might be some of the best I've seen in any manga. Also, keep in mind I'm rounding up from 9.8 here, but just because it's easier that way and nitpicking so much to lower it by 0.2 is just weird. The art in Kurosawa is simple, but it works. It takes place around the characters and their conversations, and they don't do anything high octane, so the art is never going to get absolutely wild like Berserk or Holy Land. That being said, when the art zooms in really close on a face, it gets the expression perfect, and has a lot of detail and impact. Overall facial expressions are very well done, and this series has a bunch of really great reaction images I'm going to be using from now on. The pencil style of Kurosawa is very unique. I like the use of the pencil to make this floaty, dreamlike sequence seem even more surreal with the opacity and lightness of the art. It does a really great contrast of using light shading to make things bright and happy, or darkening to make it intense and serious. There were a few panels that made me pause reading for a second and just appreciate the art. It does what it needs to do, and it stays consistent over the course of the entire serialization. There's no one chapter that has a major drastic change in art style compared to the last for better or for worse, and everything feels intentional. Onanie Master Kurosawa is truly a masterpiece of a manga. It's hard to express how truly surprised I was by the quality of this series. How it's flown under my radar for so long, I'm not really sure. It was such an original and refreshing take on a high school story, with depthful, realistic characters, a well-written story with surprising twists and deep messages, and besides the character building, it managed to make a good use of the small amount of downtime that there was, with some genuinely funny lines here and there, or relatable middle school events that take you back and make you laugh. On top of all of that, there was plenty of moments that were truly emotional and jaw-dropping in the quality of their execution, for how they fit in with the story thematically, but also create a drastic shift of style and tone. It was perfectly paced from beginning to end, not too long and not too short for it to be able to get its messages across and finish the story. The grotesque subject matter was handled respectfully and realistically, and was never used for the shock value of what's happening, but services to create development for the characters every time and further the story. In my heart and Mal rating, I give Onanie Master Kurosawa a 10, but mathematically to my rating system, I have to give it a 9.3 to stay consistent with my ratings over all my future reviews. Of course, the math doesn't always best represent my thoughts, because my Holy Land review gave a 9, when I believe that Holy Land was better than Kurosawa overall. That showcases how the math doesn't always represent my real opinion. Anyways, it's an arbitrary value used for the sake of simplifying my opinion into something easily understandable. My real score is, it's good. Go read it, you lazy ass. You probably have over 10 series on your plan to read list. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, as I have more manga reviews and other analytical content on the way. And also, read this manga. It's really something truly unique. Go check out my past videos on this channel if you're interested in discovering some other manga, or if you've read Berserk, go check out my Berserk video about the recent chapters. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. But it services the story to such an incredible length that it can't really be... Kurosawa starts to learn what he's missing in his relationships. Kitahara is a bit overdone, but she has a... And a lot of her psychological things get explored. Psychological things, yes. It does what it needs to do, and the art stays. Of course, the math doesn't always represent my thoughts, but because Holy Land, I gave it a... I was so close. I did the entire minute and a half. Check that Holy Land review out, by the way. Anyways. What the fuck?